Sanders will no longer answer questions from columnist Sean Keeler. Colorado attributed the decision to a series of sustained personal attacks in Keeler's coverage of the program, and this comes just weeks after Prime had took issue with the local CBS affiliate reporter after a story published by CBS. Coach Prime had this exchange with another media member Saturday.
If I ask a negative question, will you not answer them anymore?
That's being negative right now. Like, you take an approach that I'm going to be negative. I'm not negative to anybody in here. I will challenge you and ask you why or where is this coming from. So I'm not built like that. I'm not built to hate. I'm not a hateful guy. I come with love. I think if anybody in here has had encounters with me, I don't come with the bull junk. I come with the peace and the joy. Now, when you show me where you stand, I might have to change that a little bit. So I'm not going to match your ignorance.
All right, Shay, you're up first. Any issue with how Deion handled that?
Well, maybe not that particular guy, but there's this one columnist, Sean Keeler. He's used the phrase false prophet, deposition Deion, Planet Prime, Bruce Lee of BS, Deion Kool-Aid, and Circus. That's personal. If you want to talk about my program, if you want to say I'm not doing a good job of coaching, if you want to say that I don't do a good job of disciplining my players, and my players are not disciplined, and they're not playing the game the right way, I can live with that. But what does these personal attacks have to do with my program? Why are you attacking me personally? Okay, I understand that my persona preceded me. You know, he got the name Prime. And that's what people refer him. They call him Coach Prime, and I get all of that. But this notion that I should be allowed to, because I'm in a position, I'm a head coach, and I should let people take personal attacks at me. Nah, I ain't gonna deal with that. If you want to talk about my program, okay, that's fine. We're not as good as we thought we were. We're not as good as we're supposed to be. My players, Deion is not doing a good job of coaching these players because they're still making the same mistake week in and week out. So that shows me, if you want to say they lack discipline, all these penalties, I don't see where they've gotten any better from last year. I can live with all of those harsh critiques. But when you start to attack me personally, nah, I'm not going to answer your questions. I'm just going to keep it moving on. I'll let someone else go, and they can ask me a question that some people might deem negative. But I understand that comes along with the territory. But you attacking me personally, that doesn't come along with this territory.
Go ahead, Paul.
Shannon, we can all quibble about the personal attacks, and that's fair. Everybody comes from a different perspective. I haven't read a lot from this columnist, so I don't know the context exactly why he said some of the things that he did. But let's not forget that Deion Sanders is a gigantic figure. This isn't just some normal football coach at State U. He's a larger-than-life personality that he has encouraged and enhanced and made a fortune off of throughout his career. And to take nothing away from one of the most iconic athletes ever to play college football, pro football, NFL football, you name it. But he's in a different situation now. He's selling Colorado on his name. He's selling it on sizzle because it's not a football tradition. It's not a football power. It's not someplace that most of us really care about. But one of the few people who does care about it is this guy that writes for the local newspaper. And to publicly go after him, I think, is a mistake. He doesn't have to like it. Why doesn't he just ignore it? That's how it usually works. Stephen A's been there in his career as a writer. I've been there many times. And you shut the guy out. You don't turn him into the story. And that's my biggest mistake as somebody who understands the media like Coach Prime. Why would he do this? What's the point? And here we are. We're talking about him, okay. Maybe that's part of it, but it's in a very negative and dysfunctional way.
Stephen A.
Shannon, before you chime in, let me say this. You know,
Go ahead.
Last year when Prime arrived at Buffalo,
Yeah.
Obviously Shannon and I were, we weren't at the TCU game, but we were at the home opener. Then we took First Take there, and we did the show from there. Rooting for Deion. I've known Deion for years. He's a friend and a brother. Got a lot of love for him. I do not agree with how he's handled this situation. I do not agree with how the Colorado program has handled this situation. And quite frankly, I'm a bit disappointed because you have to have thicker skin than that. If you don't want to talk to the reporter, Shannon, don't talk to the reporter. But to have the program putting out a release announcing that we're not going to take questions as a program from this guy is utterly ridiculous. You started off 3-1. You beat TCU. Put Paul and Shannon back up there. I don't even want to see just me. I want to see the both of them as well. TCU was the national runner-up the year before. Colorado opens the season in a primetime Deion Sanders era. You beat them. And what did you do post-conference? Do you believe? Do you believe? And he kept asking that question, and he wanted to hear the reporter say, do you believe? And then he shoot him off, okay? So what happens thereafter? You win 2 more games. You start off 3-0. The rest of the way, you lost 6 straight. You lose 7 of 8. And obviously, you're going to have critics, people who were lining up. Remember that pregame motivational speech Coach Lanning at Oregon did before they romped Colorado on national television, Shannon? And remember how he said, you remember, he took a direct shot at primetime Deion Sanders. He was saying, yo, you understand what I'm saying? We ain't trying to win the headlines. We going to win out on the field. And then they went and they slaughtered them. And so we have to take that into account. Now, primetime, and I believe in him. I believe in him as a coach. I damn sure believe in him as a person, you know, and I've known him for over 2 decades. I know that his purpose is higher than just winning football games. But he's also somebody that has to understand winning football games, that's where it has to start. Because everything else, in terms of the media, nobody wants to hear all of that. You don't want – listen, when we got on LeBron James, I bring up LeBron James for this one thing. What did I used to get on LeBron James about, Shannon? What did I used to get on LeBron James about? If he did great, it was fantastic. He'd soak it all in. And when he had a bad night, well, I'm just trying to be a role model to the kids. And they used to drive me nuts. It's like, can we stick to basketball? This is my brother. I love him and I believe in him and I agree. And I know where he's coming from. But there is evidence where you've gone against the media. There is evidence when you've been negative towards the media because they've been negative towards you. Maybe not as the head coach at Colorado, but as a player you were that way. Over the years you were that way. Last year when you beat TCU, when you were shooing folks off, you were that way. You can't then turn around because of a columnist who's been considered somebody. I don't know Mr. Keeler at all. I don't know much about his work. Sean Keeler for the Denver Post. I'm not casting any aspersions on him, but there are people in the media out there that said he has been hypercritical and he has been accused of being a shock jock, et cetera, et cetera. If anybody's supposed to know how to deal with that, it's supposed to be prime time.
Wait, let me challenge you on one thing, though, Stephen A.
Sure.
I don't think we need to worry about whether Prime can handle the media. Nobody has thicker skin than Prime. I think there's another angle here. I think he's intentionally wanting to put the guy on blast so people see it and they know what the deal is. I don't think it's that Prime can't take the negative press. I think his intention is to let people see what this guy is all about and his deal.
I'm not implying that he can't take it. But the point is, that don't mean you handled it right. You got a program that put out a press release about exiling the reporter.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Paul has been a reporter for years. I've been a reporter for decades. That doesn't happen.
I'm just saying maybe he's showing his power.
If a coach doesn't talk, listen, nobody had more power than Nick Saban. Okay, Nick Saban, you didn't hear Alabama. You saw Nick Saban at the podium going off. That's what you saw. Or you saw him dismissing somebody. You didn't see the program sort of coming to your rescue with a bunch of stuff because now you put this guy in the spotlight and now we get to say, okay, what exactly is it that he said? Now, I understand what you said, Shannon, and you're absolutely right. It does seem a bit extreme, et cetera, et cetera. But I would remind everybody, this is not a reporter. He's a columnist. A columnist has the license to editorialize and express their opinion in the newspaper industry. You're talking to a former columnist. Yeah. This is the license that we have that reporters don't have. So his opinion, no matter how incendiary, no matter how put offish or whatever it is, it's actually his right and his job, according to the Denver Post, to do that.
I get it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that Deion's no dummy and he's strategic. He's been in this game a long time, so he knew what the fallout would be.
You can say that, but I say if Deion did it himself, yeah. But for the program to put out a release saying, this is what we're doing to that reporter. The program now looks very, very bad. Deion could have just said, no, I ain't talking to you, and left it at that.
But see, and that's what the program did. The program provided the shield because then everybody would have beat him up, although we do know where this is coming from. Because at the end of the day, the program is not going to do a whole lot without the blessings of Prime. And so when Time, okay, and then he goes into this, he gets into it with this other guy, and he says, well, if I'm critical of you, I don't have a problem with you being critical of me. I don't have a problem of other coaches taking shots at my program because that's what you're supposed to do because we're always recruiting, Stephen A. and Paul. You know that. So no matter what transpired, even during the course of the game, I'm recruiting. When I'm at the press conference, I'm recruiting. But when you start taking personal shots, I mean, to call the man a false prophet, to call the man to be a Bruce Lee of BS, what does that got to do? What does that have to do with the program, Paul? I just want you to know. I just want to know, what does that have to do with my coaching? What does that have to do with my X's and O's?
Shannon, first of all, we're talking about a guy that writes for the Denver Post. I mean, it's not like this isn't 1985 or 95 when Stephen A. and I were writing columns. This is 2024. Nobody reads these publications anymore. This is not even an important entity that Prime has now elevated his words. I doubt more than 3,000 people in Denver even read those columns. Obviously, Deion did, and that's the whole point. He's picking on some little guy for no reason at all, and therefore he's coming off as a big bully. And whether you guys know him 1,000,000 times better than I do. I know him, I respect him, I like him, I admire him, but he still looks like a bully to most people who are getting a headline of this across the country. Well, I mean, we're discussing it on the #1 sports show in America, not because of anything Prime has done on the field, because quite frankly, he hasn't done very much. Off the field, he's lost most of his team from last year, and he's replaced them, hopefully very well. But instead, he's in a food fight with some guy that doesn't even matter. But that's why I think Deion looks very small and petty here. And the entity that looks worse than Coach Prime is the University of Colorado for sanctioning this.
Well, Shannon, and I also want to chime in by saying this, Shannon. Listen. Sometimes you consider how far and how much Deion has evolved over the years. He deserves so much credit for it, and we got a lot of love for him. But you know what this is going to do. They're going to bring up what he did with Tim McCarver when he dumped a bucket of water on him not once but twice.
Of course, absolutely.
He didn't like what Tim McCarver had said about him as a player, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is arguably the greatest athlete we've ever seen in history, okay? So this is who we're talking about here. We're talking about the creme de la creme, one of the all-time elites. Well, that ain't Colorado's football program at this particular moment in time. And so when your willingness to shoo aside others coincides with the struggles that you're having, that makes it even worse because it makes it look like you're not handling the losing as well as you claim to be able to handle it. And to give somebody that kind of ammunition to come at you, I just found it to be disappointing because my whole point is, Prime, you're not winning games yet. Guess what? Go out there and win some games. You don't have to talk to that reporter. You can sit up there and say, you always got personal stuff to say about me. I'm sick of your ass. I ain't answering no questions from you. You could have done that and left it at that. But for the program to sanction it the way that they did, now you got a bigger problem because it means that if somebody feels the need to come to your defense to protect you, and we're not accustomed to seeing Prime needing protection. He is usually his own man who can handle it himself. And Colorado jumped into the fray, and now they've made it something far bigger than what it was ever meant to be.
I can't say I disagree with either one of you guys. You both make very, very compelling points. My only thing is for me is that the personal attacks. Like I said, I understand coaching, and that's one of the reasons why I never wanted to be a coach because I really can't control the outcome because I'm counting on 11 guys on defense, 11 guys on defense, 11 guys on special teams. Even though I've done a great job of trying to coach them up throughout the course of the week, there is no guarantee that my coaching is going to translate once I'm on the field on Saturday or Sunday whenever we're going to play. But for me, I just don't get down with the personal attacks. If you want to say my coaching style, bro, I ain't got these young men ready to play. Stephen A., I can live with that. And you make the point about the pattern, a pattern of behavior that we've seen from when he was a player with the and the Brave situation, and we see the Jackson State when the guy addressed him. And sometimes, look, I think time is going to have to understand. Sometimes they might say things just to get a rise out of you by calling you Deion Sanders. When I don't know anybody, and I've known the guy 30 plus years.
Right.
I don't know anybody that's ever called. I've never heard anybody call him his name. They call him Prime or they call him Time. And so for him to call him that when he says I like to be known as Coach Prime, maybe that was a situation. And sometimes, Stephen A., people will call you things just to get a situation out of you.
That's fair. That's fair, Shannon. But isn't it possible that the reporter that called him Deion, you could have sat up there and said, call me Coach Prime. Oh, my bad, I apologize, Coach Prime. He never got the opportunity because you said the minute he called you Deion, you shoved him aside. That's number one. And number two, we gotta also recognize this. Again, you're a columnist, right? Yo, Shannon, to call you a false prophet. Now the other stuff, fine. But the false prophet line, let's go with that. When you beat TCU, and you were on that roll to start it off, you were coming across as prophetic. I told you this program gonna be special. And then it nosedived. So again, that's not really calling you out your name or anything like that. If you're writing a column on a football program, well, you prophesized we were gonna do something that you didn't do yet.